Are you radio?
Like your radio, we need you to tune in.
An historic church went up in flames after a lightning strike set off a 5-alarm fire. Good evening, everyone. For years,
But because they thought it was ironic that, the church is in debt and the fire then comes, which also brings insurance money. How could that happen like that without being orchestrated? Yes, they thought I set the church on fire.
Fire, fire, this city's on fire, fire. This city's on fire, fire, fire. Hearing the witching hour come down from your tower. Don't you know this city's on fire? You have got to get out now.
Yeah, and our efforts of our people when they first got here to try to contain it, immediately there was a partial collapse of the steeple itself.
Armies marching on the ground, on the ground. This is the revolution.
I thank the family, the faith, for their support. The civic leaders have been working very diligently with us, and so we ask people to continue to keep us in prayer.
Power, power, gotta keep your power, power. Gotta keep your power, power, power. Grab your guns and swords, rise like warriors. We are gonna fight this battle. Take your post, pick up your armor.
The call to pastor shifted me in ways I want to say that I was unprepared for. Again, I knew I was called to pastor, and yet I was and still am a introvert. And a pastor has to be an extrovert, at least to the extent that he or she is living outside of their comfort zone. And so the church started growing. To God be the glory. The church started growing and growing at a rate that we went from one service that was half full to now being full. Then we started a second service, and then ended up doing a third service. And so we experienced, it was explosive growth, but it was continuous growth. But it also was coming at the expense of, I had to balance some other things in my life. Again, I was just married, and then 2 years later, we were blessed to have our first child, Brianna. And at the same time, when the call was extended, I had not finished my undergraduate degree. And so, I'm this new pastor. I am now a new father, and now a student, an older student, trying to finish my degree. And so trying to balance all of those things was a challenge. So I wrestled with some of the tension that I was feeling in my household. They were never against the work of ministry, and I'm grateful for that. And yet they were lacking the husband and the father because I was more available for the ministry than I was for my immediate family. So the Lord, in spite of it, He still began to bless. He was still opening doors for us, and ministry took off to the next level. July 10th, we were sitting in my office. It was the church accountant and the church's attorney. And we were working on our deal for going to our new property. We were really excited about it. And in the midst of the meeting, one of my staff persons just barged in. And normally, no, they knock. But she barged in and she said, the church is on fire. We got to get out. She said, the neighbors are calling us to say the church is on fire. And when I came out, people were standing on Saratoga, gazing up, looking at the steeple. And when I crossed the street, the steeple was engulfed in flames. And I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe that the building was literally on fire. I'm watching the sanctuary, my only church, a pastorate, literally burning to the ground.
Great, Steve.
So I got a fifth alarm, send them to the staging area, Martin Luther King in Saratoga.
Okay, fourth alarm, we struck out on last floor 43-24, 1559. Should have to fifth alarm. Correction, fifth alarm, 1559.
Operations in truck 16.
The day after the fire, I want to say was almost as traumatic as the day of the fire. Because I woke up to the local news saying, church has burned, church is in debt, and the bishop drives a Bentley. I'm like, are you kidding? Are you this really can't be happening. They used an opportunity to, and I don't know to this day how it actually came out, but they used that opportunity to suggest that the church was in financial trouble because the pastor took the money to buy a Bentley. I was just done. I'm already distraught because of the fire. Now I have to fight allegations that the church's water bill has not been paid, other vendors have not been paid because I'm taking the money to buy a Bentley. It is difficult to learn structure in a crisis. Because we had structure, we were able to just build upon what we had already established. Now, that that process taught me that be careful what you say, because I have on record me saying if I lose everything and have Jesus, I have enough to start all over again. Well, that's easy to say when you got a building, a sanctuary, everything is going the way you desire it to go. What happens when you actually lose everything?
The scripture over the pulpit is now being overshadowed by a sign declaring the building unsafe. From the street corner to the main sanctuary, Bishop Brown was allowed inside the burned out church to see the damage firsthand.
It's really bad. Total loss, really. Kind of worse than we thought, but we'll rebuild. You know.
That helped me to understand that when we say stuff, we can't just say it from a cliche standpoint, a point of view that if I lose everything and have Jesus, well, it's still true, but you gotta have enough to be able to say, okay, now how do I start again? Which then helped shift my mentality in saying church is not the building. I used to say that all the time. Church is not the building, it's the people. Well, the fire taught me it's both the building and the people. Normally people who say church is not the building, they normally got a building. But when you are nomadic people, when you are people going from week to week, I mean, we would get calls from facilities that we were renting will be unavailable in 2 weeks. So now your mind has to go in 2 weeks to figure out where we're going to meet. Can we switch the times? What can we do to keep some type of normalcy for the congregation? And so it really challenged my theology as I was going through this, because we think of people who are unfaithful going through a crisis. But what happens when the faithful go through a crisis? I didn't talk about it much, but I was becoming bitter in that season, because here I'm trying to be this pastor who is doing the right thing and being accused of all of these other things, and it seems like that God is just taking his time and trying to help us through. Publicly, I think I did pretty good, but privately, there'd be days when I'd be driving home just crying. I'd go on drives because I didn't want to disturb my house with how depressed I was at times and frustrated, angry, because you can call it pride, but when you got to now go and ask people week after week, can I use your facility? Again, we had Sundays locked down, but people, we need to have meetings about where we're going to go. Funerals, weddings, counseling sessions. A life learning lesson for me was to come to the reality that my purpose was bigger than any defining moment in my life. Sometimes we give up too soon because a situation isn't working out, when that situation is only a phase in your life and not your entire life. In fact, the grace that was upon you in a previous situation is supposed to be the stepping stone for the grace that you will receive in the next challenge. I wish I could say at 56 that all of my challenges are over, but that's not true. And so it's important for me to understand that at every junction in my life, God has released a grace for that season to help me complete purpose. One needs to live life on purpose and with purpose, and understanding that what we deem as interruptions are not always interruptions, as they are announcements that your next season is quickly approaching.
So I thank you for always loving